Hello, everyone. It is 11:10, which means it is time for our next session. So I'm going to ask everyone to take a seat and quiet down. I am happy to introduce Holly Kinnisk, Conservations Analyst with ksisskstaki, I should have practiced that. Carrie O'Shaughnessy, Riparian Specialist with Riparian Management Society, Cows and Fish, and Alvin Firstrider, Environmental Tech with the Blood Tribe Land Management. Their session is called Working with Our National Animal in Alberta, Canada. All right, welcome to the stage, guys.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. We are so thrilled to be here from Alberta, Canada, just north of Montana, if you don't know where Alberta is. So I'm Holly Kinnisk. I'm a conservation analyst at the ksisskstaki Institute. And the ksisskstaki Institute is an environmental nonprofit applied research institute, and we're affiliated with Mount Royal University, and we're based in Calgary, Alberta. And I'll let my co-presenters introduce themselves when they come up. So I wanted to start out our presentation today just acknowledging that we're gathering here in this space on the traditional territories and the ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne, the Arapaho, and the Ute, and many other North American nations, or Native American nations. These were, of course, the original stewards of our lands. Our panel today comes from central and southern Alberta, Canada. So we're located in the Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 territories and the ancestral homelands of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who have been the stewards of the land since time immemorial. So I put this map up here just to kind of display where we're from and the many different nations that are represented kind of within where we're from. So our Beaver project is called Working with Beavers. I have some lovely stickers of this for you later if you would like to come see me. So our Beaver project began in 2012, and it was a partnership project with Cows and Fish, another local nonprofit who will be speaking in a minute here. And we started working with a conservation area just outside of Calgary on a beaver restoration project. So little did we know at the time when we started that project, we got inundated with requests and questions and excitement around beavers, reintroducing beavers, coexisting with beavers, everything you could imagine. So we quickly kind of formed a program that's been running now for over 12 years. So these are our core partners. So today, like I said, our project is called Working with Beavers. It's a partnership between the core team of the ksisskstaki Institute and Cows and Fish, the Riparian Management Society. And we work with a lot of local partners as well. So a lot of municipalities, a lot of other nonprofits. And then, of course, one of my co-presenters today, Alvin Firstrider from Blood Tribe Land Management. I just wanted to do a quick shout out to our funders. Most of them are Alberta based, and we thank them very much for the support that enables us to do this important work. And the main goal of our project is really focusing on coexistence with beavers so that we can realize the landscape benefits that they bring, not only ecologically, but also the human benefits that they provide for us as humans. So we do this in a series of different ways, including like we increase knowledge with knowledge and awareness pieces, outreach and education. We provide training for the implementation of coexistence tools. We cannot keep up with the demand for coexistence tools in Alberta, so we try to host train the trainer workshops so that people can learn how to install these tools themselves. And then we research new tools and different beneficial management practices and put that information out there so that people and land managers can make good conservation-based decisions on the landscape. So for my portion of the talk today, I want to talk to you a little bit about citizen science. So if you're not familiar with citizen science, the strength of it lies in its ability to achieve both educational and scientific goals. So it engages and empowers individuals to contribute to scientific knowledge, foster collaboration, and generate data that we can actually use. And in our case, we can actually work with volunteers to help identify beaver dams from space. So last year, we launched Beavers from Space, which was our citizen science initiatives, where we were asking volunteers to search through satellite imagery of the Blood Tribe Reservation and surrounding area, which was our study area, looking for beaver dams on the landscape. So the purpose of this project was to not only educate volunteers about beavers, which there's extensive education resources on the platform that we used, which was Universe. But we also wanted to determine the presence and absence of beavers on the landscape so that we can kind of refine some potential restoration areas. So the volunteer citizen science, I'll just quickly go through the process of what a volunteer would go through. So we walked them through a tutorial that kind of helped them evaluate what a dam looks like from space and what some other confusing structures might be, like a fallen tree or a man-made bridge. So they would walk through that tutorial. It was very quick, pretty easy training for them. And then they were asked to identify how many dams they could see within the red square, which is 250 meters by 250 meters. So within 5 weeks, we engaged more than 1,900 citizen scientists from around the world. They classified 30,000 satellite images to locate beaver dams, and each image was actually reviewed by multiple reviewers. That's how you can kind of do a quality control check. And so in total, we had about 170,000 classification of images. And if you compare that to ground truthing, that would be a lot of walking and a lot of man hours. We also had a very active chat community within the Zooniverse platform where volunteers were asking questions about beavers, their habitats, their behaviors, and their cultural significance as well. So specifically going away from the education side and looking at what our scientific question was. So we are looking at, are beavers currently meeting their potential on the landscape here in our study area in southern Alberta? So we used several different data sets to kind of inform the answer to this question. We adapted and ran BRAT for our study area in Canada, which was no small feat. Our data sets are quite a bit different in Canada than what's freely available in the US. And BRAT did tell us that there is some potential for beavers on the landscape. So we then looked at the beavers from space data, and we did do a small amount of ground truthing as well. And given, of course, the time-consuming nature of ground truthing, we did about 30 sites, so about 60 kilometers of stream walking. And then we had 30,000 beavers from space sites. So you can see here on the map, the gray indicates where there were no beaver dams found. The colored markers were where we found beaver dams, with the green being the ground truthing sites that found beaver dams, and beavers from space found sites were in blue. So we then combined these data sets where we found the answer to our question, that beavers are not currently meeting their full potential on the landscape, which is sad, but also good news for us because that's lots of opportunities for restoration potential. So what does this actually mean? So we have lots of potential to increase beavers in our landscape in our study area. We'll be using this data to prioritize where we should do restoration efforts, such as beaver dam analogues. We've already done it in a few sites in the study area as well. And we'll be further analyzing our data sets and kind of looking at what are lessons learned from a citizen science perspective and how can we improve this process in future runs of the models. So now I want to pass it over to my colleague, Carrie O'Shaughnessy. Thanks, Holly. And thanks to all of you for being here in our session. So I'm going to take this to the next step. As Holly mentioned, I worked with the organization called Cows and Fish, another not-for-profit in Alberta that is trying to bring awareness and education to riparian areas within our province and the importance of them. So we are sort of getting into the space. I think everybody here knows that beavers are an important part of the riparian habitat. So presentation complete. I'm here to share some of our experience with coexistence tools that is relatively short so far.
So basically, one of the things about the coexistence tools in Alberta that we are working on as a collaborative are that they're done in partnership. So we are a not-for-profit that doesn't manage land, it doesn't own land. So we're working with municipalities, landowners, and other conservation groups that do have land and have a conflict with beaver typically. It's usually a conflict resolution thing right now, but we're also looking into more proactive measures as well. So we host workshops or learning days that bring volunteers to help learn about the tool and help put that tool in place. And by doing that, it helps to build ownership and understanding of that project among more people. It shares the work and it shares the costs. So being able to build those partnerships basically equals a more sharing of tips and tricks, but also when we're thinking about funding, particularly those expenses. The other lesson that we've been really pushing or really learning about is being able to evaluate the success and monitor the success of these projects, and even defining what success is. And right now, it's basically, are they in the ground, and are they doing what we thought they might do? Demonstration sites are essentially a place to test what's currently being done with a shift in a management technique. So we've been working on things like pond levelers, and one of the lessons, learning there is some places require an outlet protective mesh on the pipe, others don't. Tree wire wrapping, taking the knowledge of how high, how wide around the tree. Not everything works exactly how you plan it. That's another, I think, lesson in terms of evaluation and monitoring. Things don't necessarily go as planned. An early project down on the bottom there was using a larger green sewer pipe that turned out to be way too heavy for the pond that we were in. Those materials was an interpretation of the materials list that somebody purchased, right? So being clear and more coherent in terms of what the expectations might be on a materials side. So like I said, not all things work, so being adaptive and flexible and having the time and the space to be able to go back and check on these. Because I said it's quite new in Alberta, so being able to, we need to be able to track and see how things change and being able to tell that story. So this lessons learned that we've learned from a lot of you guys that are in the room, and just from some, like I said, some very young experience, basically led our collaborative to create this decision matrix of the Alberta Beneficial Management Practices Guide. And essentially, it's a similar decision matrix that we've seen from others, but it starts with, what is your issue? Do you have a problem with beaver or not? And then if you do, it takes you on a track to reactive approaches typically, and if you don't, it takes you down to some proactive management options. So essentially, as you work through there, say you have an issue, you go down to, say, tree wiring, you would click on that, and it takes you into the Beaver Beneficial Management Practices Guide, which provides considerations, advantages, disadvantages, and as well as some of the regulatory pieces you might have to think about if you want to try and employ some of these tools. So the other piece about evaluation and monitoring is the key to is about knowledge sharing and capacity building. So Holly mentioned that we've been doing these hands-on workshops. We do indoor presentations. We take people on tours. We have a beaver mailing list. Are those things actually being effective of getting the message out about beavers, what they do, how they do it? So we tend to incorporate evaluations into each of our events, so where we can gather feedback from the participants. And what we've learned so far is that about 75% of the people that come to some of these events, particularly the classroom and indoor presentations, learn something. Excellent. The others are, there's also 75% who have actually taken something they've learned and applied it to what they're doing. So that's another big piece of the sort of that action next step. So being able to track that helps us know that we're being effective in the way that we're communicating, as well as help support reporting back to our funders as well. So in terms of the coexistence tools, just expand on that a little bit, just building the experience. We have about 40 coexistence demonstration sites in Alberta that our collaborative is sort of involved in, that we have some decent, information and tracking on. And it's everything from pond levelers to culvert protectors, tree wire wrapping, to resolve issues around flooding, as well as the tree chew. So being able to just know where they are, how they are doing, is also part of the success. So if you're going to get into this work, set up a system for yourself that you can easily track where they are, what they're doing, and when you have to go back, that sort of thing. We also have some actual practitioner on the ground things that we want to work on as well. So it's a work in progress in Alberta. We have learned a lot. We are still learning. Education and sharing remains critical to building this work in Alberta. And the other piece of it is going into the beaver mimicry side and the stream restoration side with BDAs. We're starting to do that a little bit, trialing those for improvement of fish habitat, water retention, and ponded water, essentially to attract beavers back to an area. And so next, Alvin is going to discuss some of that, along with the Blackfoot-led Beaver Coexistent project.
Okay, Nasuanagok, Natayinasaksin. I just introduced myself in Blackfoot. It's important for my people to do that, so the land hears the language. Yeah, I'm here to talk to you about our part of the project was Blackfoot-led coexistence, which was kind of founded on the colonial viewpoint of looking at beavers and them being a nuisance on the landscape. So we needed to find solutions to coexist and look at the land from a holistic perspective by utilizing beavers, and from that utilizing water. So utilizing our elements to manage our landscape is very instrumental in the way we manage our land. And we are through that, we incorporate fire and bison grazing as well. But a lot of our concepts are based on Blackfoot kinship and our relationship with the land and our elements and the different stories, songs that come along with these relationships. And one of the was our beaver bundle that was gifted to us through in the area of Waterton National Park. It's one of the oldest ceremonial practices that we have, and it's something that my tribe specifically has never lost touch with. We've always had that continuation, even though our ceremonies were once outlawed. We still continue that in the stories of it and the songs and the ceremonial participation that goes along with that. This bundle is pretty much equivalent to somebody that acquires it is equivalent to somebody that has a PhD. The ecological knowledge that they gain from it and the contents that this bundle holds is really, from an ecological perspective, has species that have gone extinct. But it's really important that we recognize that spiritual aspect of the project. These are just some key words that our people that have that right to talk about the Beaver Bundle. I talk to you about it in a generalistic perspective, but there's rights that you have to be able to acquire to actually go into it, into more details. But these are just some words that relate to that and relate to ksisskstaki or beavers, and are really instrumental in how we proceeded. So yeah, we built a couple, I think we're up to 9 beaver dam analogues throughout our reserve. The first year we did it, we were really like gung-ho, and we were trying to build as many as we could in the late fall so we could capture the spring melt The area that we built is very dry and has been modified due to the regulation of our streams. In southern Alberta, our rivers are really heavily regulated through dams and irrigation, and it's really taxed our streams and our rivers, and we're having to implement beaver mimicry to help alleviate those symptoms, because we've been living in a drought. Seems like ever since I've been a kid, we've talked about drought, and we're at that point where we're at a point of no return to where we're actually seeing our major rivers dry up in the fall time, and it's stuff that haven't happened in my elders' lifetime, in my lifetime. So it's alarming what we're seeing out on the landscape. So these type of tools are really instrumental in trying to help change the hydraulic system that's occurring on the landscape. So yeah, this is just the year one after. It goes to show that it started to work. It didn't like flood the whole area, but it actually held water back, and it started to change the groundwater. Even this year when I was out monitoring the area, you could still see that there was water in the soil, where when we initially started out there, like it was bone dry at the times where we monitor it. So we have seen some changes, and we've done some maintenance work to continue the impacts of these BDAs. A lot of them get blown out in the spring, so just being able to maintain them and monitor what they're actually doing out on the landscape. Another aspect that we're trying to incorporate is actually the coexistence, where we're either wrapping trees or building pond levelers or the exclusion fences. Like I said, we have heavily regulated streams or rivers, and whenever the irrigation, the water is allocated to their capacity, then they release water, and then that creates problems for our land occupants or homeowners, and then we're having to come up with solutions. They just released water about a month ago, and it slowly filled up the coulees, and now we're seeing impacts where people are wanting coexistent structures implemented into their occupancy or their home site leases. But yeah, they're just some solutions we're trying to accomplish. The picture there, the 2022 one, the land owner, we just did an interview with him, and he's still pretty skeptical, but he's willing to try, which is the main thing. And we're out there trying to alleviate the symptoms of climate change. Thanks.
Well, since the session, we really only have 2 minutes left. I don't think it really makes sense to start a Q&A, so I think there's some questions in the chat, in the app, if you guys could answer. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your experience in Alberta. That was really meaningful to me.